Clementine? Not yet. Hi, Dr. Barber. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Recording in progress.
Make sure we just have your mics on. We're going to give it a minute transition. So this is a reminder from last week we talked about this. There's a delay, lag from when the Zoom starts and when the meeting starts until the folks actually on Zoom can hear us. So we'll give it about a minute for the lag to catch up. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our afternoon session of today's council meeting. It's Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order and pass it to Clementine for a roll call and to share announcements with the public.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Rash.
Here.
Mayor Williamson.
Here.
And the minutes will reflect that Councilmember Smith is absent.
Okay, with that, we will move. Thank you, Clementine. With that, we'll move to our presentations. Item 1 on the agenda is to receive presentation from the Stanford Doerr School of Sustainability at Hopkins Marine Station. With that, I'm excited to have Bill come up, but I won't do the introductions. I'll pass it to Dante, our city manager, for introductions.
And I'm sorry, was this for the first presentation? And our assistant city manager actually was the one who was instrumental in putting this together, so I'll have him introduce the speaker.
Oh, thank you so much, City Manager Hall. We're very excited. It's very important for us as we continue to develop and grow our partnerships with various educational institutions here in the city of Monterey and on the peninsula. Just in the last 2 weeks, both Dante and I have met with staff from Cal State Monterey Bay, from Middlebury Institute, as we look to the future of what their plans are. And another important partner, of course, is Monterey Peninsula College, which we'll be connecting with later in the month. But one that is hidden away a little bit, not in the city of Monterey, but we provide fire services to the area, is Hopkins Marine Station. And we're very interested and looking forward to Bill's presentation this afternoon. He's the associate director over at Hopkins Marine Station, and the new partnership between the Doerr School of Sustainability as well as over at Stanford University. So it's a great partnership. Looking forward to hearing more about what they have, and also open to future opportunities to collaborate together. So with that, Bill, come on up. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor, distinguished council members, and members of our community. So I am Bill Sherrod. I'm the Associate Director at Stanford's Hopkins Marine Station. There we go. In order to talk about where the position and opportunities in the future, we want to take a brief moment to understand where we are today and sort of the journey to get there. And that really starts with the 130-year history of the station in this community. And it's very much intertwined with the origin story of the city of Pacific Grove. As many of you may know, Pacific Grove started out as a Methodist retreat, basically a summertime retreat. Going along with that was also the summer educational program that was a prominent movement in that era. Starting in the late 1870s, the Chautauqua movement was a Sunday school teacher program to bring education to the communities. And that movement brought programming to the Pacific Grove Methodist Retreat. Central to the Pacific Grove movement was one that focused on marine biology and zoology and the collection of specimens. And that'll be important because that was something that sort of precipitated the transition of the station to its current location today. Incidentally, as that was going along, there was this discovery or this revolution in how to educate about marine sciences. recognize the importance and the opportunity to have observational learning of marine science and understanding our ecosystem and our environment. And he commissioned faculty to go take a look up and down the Pacific coast for the most ideal spot, but landed at the city of Pacific Grove. And so initially, Hopkins Seaside Laboratory was established in 1892 at Lover's Point. Subsequently later, it transitioned to what we know today as our current site over at Point Cabrillo and Point Alones. And from 1892 to the early 1900s, really around 1917 is when the Agassiz building opened at the current site, and that was the first building at the campus. Followed by the Lurb building, and that was to support expanded research. The reason for that movement was because of that popularity of that collections amongst the community and citizen scholars, in essence, started to damage the intertidal zone where the researchers were actually conducting their research. And so in order to protect that, they moved to an area that wasn't as densely populated, didn't see as a lot of activity, and that was our current location. There was a couple of phases of capital growth that resulted in the station's growth to its current footprint of about 11 acres. That included a time frame in the mid-60s where the acquisition of what we know as the Monterey Bay Boat Works from the Sino family as that industry transitioned out of the Monterey area to assume those facilities. And then also when the Hovedon Cannery was available, the university acquired that cannery. Part of that growth was intentional to protect the marine research that goes on in the intertidal around those academic buildings, and later became part of the cornerstones of things that we know in this community, such as the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And we are entering in a transition of capital renewal, or a phase of capital renewal under the stewardship of the Stanford Door School of Sustainability. We'll talk more about that as time allows. So things that were done at a marine biology station. Again, as many of you know today, you walk along the trail, you see there is a bunch of trees, there's some buildings back there, some boats, and really not a rich understanding of what goes on. It is a marine biology research station. It's home to about 14 faculty and instructors and the respective labs. And in those labs, it's predominantly graduate students, so folks on their doctoral journey to become scientists, scholars that work in various specialties centering on marine biology, zoology, and ecology. Right? So everything from the molecular level, evolutionary, I'll get that, evolutionary to developmental biology to ecosystems and organisms. So all of that is done there, including things such as having an understanding of what caused the change to overfishing in our region and the economic impacts. What causes things such as the importance of the kelp forest and how that can be sustained or rejuvenated based on our observations and discoveries. Right? And then as we think about positioning for the future, it involves new faculty acquisition, so recruiting the best and most talented to come and work at this pristine campus, which is a gateway to the sea, and the opportunity to go from the lab to the bay and into the open ocean to understand new discoveries that unlock things for medical and human advantage or condition in terms of biotechnology based on marine-based organisms, to understanding the movements and migrations of sharks and tunas and whales, both to improve the sustainability and survivability of those species, but also to improve our understanding of food stocks and environmental security. Our campus, as you said, is this beautiful spot here on the bay. It is what we call coastal dependent, and it was also a point of significant of archaeological and cultural significance. It was home to our pre-colonial tribes that were resident in our Monterey Peninsula area, as well as the ancestral Chinese fishing village community. And so we honor those and recognize those impacts and that cultural significance for both of those communities in that station today. In 2021, 2022 timeframe, Stanford launched the first school it's launched in 75 years. That is the Door School of Sustainability, with a primary focus of reevaluating or rethinking about how we do higher education. It's not just teaching and research, but it's also impact and impact at scale. And so this Door School of Sustainability was launched to address some of the climate challenges and sustainability challenges that faced our globe. And central in those is the ocean. 70% of our planet is covered by water. 50% of our oxygen is generated by the sea, and the oceans absorb 90% of carbon gas emissions, right? Greenhouse gas emissions. So they are critical to support our ecosystems, to support humanity, and to support our globe. And so we are focused on an interdisciplinary school, the first of its kind, that combines education, research, discovery, scaling through innovation to achieve change at speed. So as you can see, the tagline is "For life on Earth forever," and that is our focus. So that concludes my presentation. I look forward to your questions.
All right, Bill, thank you for your presentation. I have to say, you're doing amazing work, at Stanford. I'm hearing my voice, it's kind of weird. And part of the work that you've been doing was inviting elected officials to meet with faculty researchers at the school. And I think Dr. Barber, Councilmember Garcia, and I all had the chance to join you for that event. And I have to say, it was a really cool experience for me. Just speaking to the research that one of the faculty members was doing, and I might get this wrong, so if she's out there and listening, please feel free to correct me. But what I remember is that there's research being done on starfish and looking at environmental factors, but also genetic factors in regards to how they reproduce, and when they lose a branch of the star and how it redevelops back. And that's interesting, not just for sea life, but also what are those tools and research, and how can that impact humanity? And so it's just really cool to see what they have going on. And I'll share one last fun tidbit from that experience, which was one of the faculty members took me over to her labs while we were there. And going into the lab, they have a spigot that's salt water, and it might sound less cool, me saying it now out loud, but when you're there, I mean, it's really cool because the water comes directly from the ocean, which is right there on campus. So it has a direct connection to the ocean so that they can do their research right there. So the conveniency of that. And it's just awesome that we have that right here as an amazing asset. I appreciate your all's partnership. And I look forward to the continued collaboration as we kind of continue to advance forward on taking care of our oceans and our globe. So thank you. Any questions, comments? Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I did have that opportunity to be there as well, and I did enjoy it very much, and had a great opportunity talking to some of the professors dealing with sea level rise. Okay. Talking with sea level rise. And so I really appreciate that, and would like to find out more of what you're doing there, because I know our staff is working hard and doing a lot here, dealing with that report, and just recently gave a workshop for our community. So would love to see how we could connect more with that. And that also helps with the sustainability piece. So would love to see how that connection could happen.
Absolutely. I know that one of the things is recently also the California Coastal Commission promulgated some guidance with respect to nature-based mitigations with respect to sea level rise and how we factor those and consider those. So, but we look forward to continuing the partnership with the city and the city leadership and various aspects that are relevant and germane to how we can mutually support the advancement and benefit of our community. Right?
Thank you.
Awesome. Please.
Hi, Bill. Good to see you. And thanks for coming through and for the presentation. I think along the same lines, just super fascinating, all the information and the research that comes out of this facility. And yeah, I was very impressed with the type of research that was being described at that reception earlier this year. Again, not just impacting marine life, but society in general. So super cool stuff, and I look forward to continuing to find ways to streamline that communication between staff and students and the community in general. So thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill. It's good to see you again after the party in Carmel. That was a nice event. We got to talk a lot. That photograph of riffing off of Dr. Barber's comment on climate change, the picture showing you being really quite a peninsula, bounded, it looked like 320 degrees by the ocean. Can you just talk a little bit about what climate rise would do and your first initial thoughts? Where is this going? Because you look real vulnerable, and you don't appreciate that from the road.
You don't appreciate it from the road. I appreciate the question. It's difficult to sort of appreciate the elevation from the road. It is quite actually a different perspective when you're on the boat looking at the peninsula. We sometimes lose perspective on the amount of elevation that we have to our community. So at the station in particular, what we see is heights up to about 45 feet above sea level, so mean high water line. Where we're focused mostly is around that 20-foot zone because we anticipate both the combination, not just sea level rise, but the combination of sea level rise with peak storm surge, right, is where we would see the most vulnerability to our shore infrastructure and potentially compromise of some of the buildings. As we have seen that in the past through heavy storms. If we remember, I think it was 2021, where it was Monterey is going to become an island, kind of that winter storm, heavy atmospheric rivers. So there was some seawater intrusion into one of the labs in one of the older buildings in the ground floor. What we anticipate is that due to the nature of the way that Rocky Point is configured, that there is a cup, if you will, in around basically from the oldest building from Agassiz Beach to Fisher, adjacent to what is now the aquarium, is the lowest level terrain that we see. So should there be significant rise and should there be significant storm surge, then that would be the area that would be most likely to be the wetlands for a period of time until it abates. I think the way we look at it is we anticipate a 1 to 2 foot sea level rise in about the 50-year event horizon, but then plus or minus 7 foot for planning factor for that storm surge to account for construction, renovation, how we position our assets there on that campus.
And you're probably the experts on whether to harden that low point or not, or aren't you?
We have talent across the institution that can be brought to bear, but it's certainly not a singular decision by us. It is in partnership because it is open space institutional and the local coastal plan for the city of Pacific Grove in partnership with the California Coastal Commission. So there are many stakeholders and equities that are at play in those discussions to make sure that we do have meaningful and thoughtful investment in what we do. I think what we see is there is less of an appetite in this era for riprap, man-made, concrete outfall, rocky outcroppings, and instead look at how do we allow ourselves to do a gradual retreat from established areas, because trying to beat back the seas will be a daunting challenge over the years.
Thank you.
I think that the one point is where we see the wave run up and the incursions is actually counterintuitive due to the way that the hydrodynamics in the bay work. So it's not on the windward side or the western side, that side facing Lover's Point. It's actually inside the cove. And the reason we see that is all the shell midden that is washed up from our healthy sea otter community has resulted in a run-up of scallop shells onto the beach that once washed out at one point, all were brought back after a series of storms. So it's interesting to see the sea circulation in that region.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Bill, thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and open it up for public comment, so don't go too far. Public comments are specifically on this item. So this is not general public comment. This is not for items that are not on today's agenda. This is specifically for the presentation that was just given. So what we do for the public comment period is we identify the public speakers at the beginning of the public comment period. Once those folks are identified, we then close it off and only those people will be able to speak. So you can't raise your hand after the fact. You have to identify yourself at the beginning of the public comment period for each item on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and start with folks on Zoom. Yes.
And as we go into that, I just wanted to advise you that we did have some technical issues getting sound working on Zoom. It seems to be working now, but we apologize for the disruption.
Perfect. Thank you for that update. So for folks on Zoom, we're taking public comments on the presentation that was just given. This is not general public comments. So for folks on Zoom, you can navigate your way to the raise hand function. While you're navigating your way there, I'll check in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? If you could just stand up to the left of the podium. I'm not seeing any hands. Not seeing any takers. All right, I'll go ahead and close it off in the chamber, and I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have one online, so let's go ahead and take that caller.
You can go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Nina Beatty. I wanted to know what Hopkins is doing as far as the Fukushima dumping that's happening. We've had levels of radiation measured in the bay after the Fukushima disaster, but to my knowledge, there's been no public notice of what those levels are, and of course, impacting sea life. And scientists I know internationally have said that this is one of the factors in the starfish wasting disease, as well as immune impacts to other sea creatures and the loss of sea life, the loss of food sources for seals and sea lions and other marine animals. I'd also like to know if Hopkins is investigating the impacts of sonar, the high decibel sonar used by the Monterey Bay Aquarium and other geophysical companies, and the damage to the canyon from this use. The Navy also reportedly has high decibel transponders installed in and around the sanctuary, and these are constantly blasting away at the marine environment. And as everyone knows, the marine environment thrives on silence, not on these very, very high decibel bursts of energy that are hitting them all the time. The Navy's also installed a 5G antenna on the bay, and I want to know if Hopkins is following the science, the known impacts from 5G and 4G and microwave radiation on marine life, including the ocean birds and the seals and sea lions and all the creatures that are in the vicinity of it. There's a lot of issues that are impacting the ocean on an ongoing basis. Some of them are being done by the U.S. government, but that doesn't exempt them from research and disclosure to the public and those people that care about the ocean. We need answers on those things. Thank you.
All righty. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Bill, did you have any last minute thoughts before we close this item out?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak with you all and to have you out at the station. And I look forward to having city leadership come out to learn about what we do. In response to the question, I think it's important to understand the distinctions of how research is conducted, how it is organized, how it is pitched, in essence, to gain sponsorship, and what those questions that they're trying to answer and resolve are. The nature of the work that the faculty do overlaps with some of those areas, but nothing that comes to mind specifically to those topics. We are focused on maintaining a good partnership with our municipal leadership, both the cities, the county, the state, as well as other partners within the region. So the aquarium, MBARI, CSUMB, UC Santa Cruz, and areas to make sure that we collectively both take care of our treasure, which is the Monterey Bay. It is one of the most unique and impactful biodiverse regions in the world, and also use that as the platform to advance our understanding of what is going on, both human impact in that environment and the impact of the environment itself for better sustainability and survivability of our ecosystem. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today in the presentation. Many thanks to you, the leadership at Hopkins, staff, faculty in particular, for the work that they're doing to help protect our planet.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All righty. With that, we will transition to general public comments. So this is an opportunity to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. So I'll start with folks on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can navigate your way to the raise hand function. In the meantime, I will check with folks in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on general public comment, just ask that you stand up to the left of the podium. If you'd like to remain seated, just identify yourself by raising your hand. So I see 3 in the chamber. Anybody else want to speak on general public comment? All right, so we'll cut it off to those 3. I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 1 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start in the chamber. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Dan Turner, Monterey, Fisherman's Flats. Chapter 5 of the Sidewalk Saga. After the first time I spoke to the council in February, Billy called and said that I was on the list and it would happen in April. Sidewalk would be fixed in April. This is May. Didn't happen. So you know what I did this morning? I went over to what used to be Public Works, now it's engineering, and to say, you know what, maybe something's new. And I ran into Billy, and he does have a last name. His name is Thomas, very nice fellow. Incidentally, everybody's been very nice. Nothing gets done, but everybody's been very nice. And Billy said to me that he or someone just sent out yesterday or so a letter to these people up the street that the city's had it up to here. They're going to send a contractor in to fix a sidewalk, and they're going to send them a bill and, you know, the lien on the property. So I said, oh, thanks. I said, so when do you think sidewalk will be fixed? And he said, well, I have to call the contractor. And I said, you can call him today or tomorrow? And he said, yes, today or tomorrow. And I said, well, you know, you've had experience with them. How long does it take for them to fix a sidewalk? And he said, well, I don't know how many people they have working for them. Okay. So, again, this is disgraceful that it's taken, you know, I don't keep a diary, so I don't know when the first time was that I went to see these people at Public Works, but it's probably at least 2 years. This is disgraceful. It takes this long to get a sidewalk fixed. Matter of fact, and maybe all I have to do is grind it down, but nothing happens. I've been living in this area since 1970. I've been living in the city of Monterey since 1978. I've never heard of anyone having a problem like this with Public Works. Now, you guys are nice, but you're not, you know, you don't have an executive function. You have policy function and everything. Perhaps if someone, and I was thinking of the city manager, called whoever's in charge. I don't know if it's the fellow in charge of engineering or if it's someone else who's in charge of Public Works. You call them and say, what is the problem with getting this guy's sidewalk fixed? I'd really appreciate that. Would you do that for me? Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you.
Please.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to speak in front of all of you who serve this wonderful community that I'm so proud to be a part of. My name is Jeffrey Glickman. I'm a rabbi. I'm the rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel that serves the whole peninsula, and I live at 1 Surfway here in Monterey. In a nutshell, I'm here to recommend that you reevaluate the requirement that all places where people live have to be attached to the water main via a water meter. Now, I'm the kind of person who looks at a door that's almost entirely closed, and I call it an open door. That's gotten me into trouble sometimes, but it has been really tremendous at making miraculous things happen. I have built many different structures at the Rohingya refugee camps in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, where there is no grid to hook up with. Right after the earthquake, we built structures in Haiti, in Lilliqua, Haiti, again, without a grid. Technology has advanced so much that there are properties that I call generally unloved properties that are in the city of Monterey. Maybe they don't have access to a road by car, only by foot. Maybe they're wetlands adjacent. Maybe there are wildlife concerns or steep. And there's very little area for building a conventional house on, let alone hooking up to a water main. But there are very inexpensive technological advancements in compostable toilets, where in digesters, where water generation systems that cost $500 and pull 10 gallons of fresh water out of the air, solar options, and mini homes, or tiny homes, where people can live in real comfort. We're not talking about survivalist living, but people can really live in comfort in a small space. And as I say, Christy Sabdo recommended that I speak to you about this because right now there's this quagmire that you cannot build unless you're hooked up to the water main, and it's required that you're hooked up to a water main. And I would love to get the conversation rolling and started, and people can contact me if they have any interest in such a thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williamson, City Council members, and esteemed leaders of the City of Monterey. I'm Sabrina Hiltonen, and I am the Old Monterey Business Association Executive Director. And in that role, I manage our downtown districts as well as our lighthouse districts, business districts, and I have the distinct honor of managing our 4th of July parade. So I am here inviting everyone up here in the leadership team, everyone online, everyone here in the chamber, to please join us on Saturday, July 4th for our annual community parade. It's going to start at 10 a.m. It goes down Alvarado Street, swings up Del Monte Avenue, and concludes down Calle Principal. We are anticipating approximately 20,000 people with the Saturday date as well as the 250th anniversary of our country. If you would like to walk in the parade, there's a few opportunities for you. If you're part of an organization, we are still accepting entries. And so please get a group together and you can walk down the parade. We also need volunteers to carry banners and help with marshals. So there's a few opportunities for you to do that. Entries for the parade applicants are due by May 29th. We also need volunteers for day of key events and assistance, as well as passing out our posters in June. Last but not least, we cannot have the City of Monterey's 4th of July parade without the help of our sponsors. This helps to assist us with the costs, and these are tax-deductible donations that individuals and companies can make. Not only will you be contributing to your community, but you will also be ensuring that we can continue with this beautiful tradition and have a lot of great events. We have a 130-member drum and bugle corps that are going to be coming from Southern California. And hot off the press, I just found out that KSBW's anchors, Aaron Clark and Dan Green, are going to be our grand marshals, which guess what? That will allow for more coverage. So please, if you can, make an individual or company tax-deductible donation for our sponsorships. Money must be received by May 31st in order to ensure that your name or company's name are on all printed materials. For more information about event details, sponsorships, volunteering, as well as joining the parade, please go to oldmonterey.org with all your information. And I'm looking forward to everyone celebrating on the 4th of July. Thank you.
Wow, that was impressive. That was amazing. Thank you, Sabrina. All right, and welcome aboard, by the way. I didn't get to say that to you last time you came to the council meeting, so we're really happy to have you in your role now. All right, with that, we'll go to our folks on Zoom. I think there was one caller on Zoom.
You can go ahead.
This is Nina. Thank you. This is Nina Beatty. On May 1st, UN investigative journalist Richard Medhurst reported that the creation of the petrogas dollar and making the U.S. the sole source of gas and oil for the world, including Europe and Asia, is the goal of the U.S. Navy blockade of oil and gas from other countries and the Arctic, the capture and sinking of oil tankers, the destruction of Levantine ports, and the U.S.-enabled destruction of oil and gas infrastructure of other countries, with Chevron the biggest beneficiary. This is the real purpose of the attacks on Iran and the kidnapping of President Maduro. The price of gasoline locally keeps escalating, but former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter asked this weekend, what happens when there is no gasoline at the gas stations? What happens when there's no aviation fuel? Spirit is out of business. Flights are being canceled. Why are we expanding the airport? When people can't get to their jobs, when tourists don't come to Monterey and the TOT tax is zero, when Salinas Valley Ag can't grow crops because they don't have fertilizer, when food can't be shipped, know that the U.S. Navy did this, and city and county leaders did this, and that the Monterey model has destroyed this community with Chevron laughing all the way to the bank, while the Navy and Pentagon siphon off American assets to pay for their endless wars for complete control. They have also put Monterey at risk for attack. Other countries will take action against the Navy to stop U.S. piracy, its crimes against their nations and the earth, its grooming and arming seditionists in their countries by DLI. Monterey will be a target. What then? The Navy's powerful microwave radiation has been damaging Monterey itself, causing cancer, illness, and death. Its special projects are harming the entire Earth. A new study found 1,800 babies have died in Cuba since 2017 due to U.S. sanctions and the blockade. Who is conducting the blockade that kills these babies? The U.S. Navy. Julia Ward Howe founded Mother's Day to stop the wars. Where are the mothers saying no? This must stop. There's no future for Monterey, the children here, or anywhere unless Americans stop this lawless, immoral behavior by their government and the military. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close general public comment, bring it back to the council. Moving on to the consent agenda. There's been no items that have been requested to be pulled. Council, do you wish to pull anything?
No.
All right. Staff, has there been any changes to requests from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll now open it up for public comment. This is an opportunity for folks in the public to pull any items from the consent agenda. We'll start with folks on Zoom. If you could navigate your way to the raise hand function. In the meantime, I'll check in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? Not seeing any takers, so we'll go back to our callers on Zoom, do a countdown to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody on Zoom, bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move to our public hearing item. Item 5 on the agenda is to open a public hearing to receive protest of proposed stormwater utility fees and adopt resolution directing a mailed ballot proceeding if a majority protest does not exist. With that, I'll pass it to Dante for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, tonight is the council's being asked to open the public hearing for the 218 process for the proposed stormwater utility fee. We just had our last community meeting or town hall meeting on the storm fee last night, essentially, and we were able to answer a lot of questions from the public and just provide some information. And tonight is the opportunity for property owners to submit their written protest to the council and determine whether a majority exists of protest to move forward or not. As council knows, the stormwater services are largely supported by a limited and declining funding source. And the current projections show that the funding will be depleted in the next couple of years if something isn't done or if a dedicated fee is not established. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca Bogut, who is going to provide the full presentation and answer any questions the council has.
Evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Rebecca Baggett. I'm an environmental regulations analyst. Tonight's item, as Dante mentioned, is the protest hearing for the proposed stormwater utility fee. A protest hearing is a procedural requirement under Prop 218 before the city may impose a property-related fee to fund the operations and maintenance of the storm system. Proposition 218 requires 3 steps: notice, a public hearing, and a protest process. Notices were mailed to all affected parcels on May 20th, 2026, satisfying the 45-day noticing requirement. Tonight's hearing fulfills the remaining requirements. The purpose of this hearing is to receive and tabulate written protests from affected property owners. 1 protest may be submitted per parcel by the property owner of record. All protests must be received prior to the close of the public hearing to be counted. This evening, we're requesting that council open the public hearing, receive any public comment, and then close the hearing, at which point staff will tabulate all timely written protests. A majority protest exists if protests are received from more than 50% of affected parcels. If a majority protest exists, the city is prohibited from moving forward with the fee. If a majority protest does not exist, Staff is requesting that council adopt the proposed resolution. This action would confirm that a majority protest does not exist and direct the next step in the process, a mail ballot proceeding where property owners will have the opportunity to vote on the proposed fee. Ballots would be mailed to property owners, and the voting period would conclude on July 6th at noon. The proposed fee would require approval by a majority of returned ballots in order to move forward. I'd also like to note that we did receive one objection via email, and I did print out a copy that you should have in front of you to view. Happy to take any questions as well if you have.
Thank you for the presentation. Council, are there any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. For folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. In the meantime, I'll check with folks in the chamber. If you want to speak on this, I'm just ask that you stand up to the left of the podium. Or you can choose to remain seated. Just identify yourself by raising your hand. All right, I see 5 standing. Anybody else? Okay, got to cut it off to folks in the chamber. I'll do a countdown for everybody on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start in the chamber.
Hello, City Council, Mayor, Mr. Hall. I have 29 parcels that got this thick stack of all these envelopes. I feel badly the city paid so much. You know, we sponsor cleaning out the storm drains in front of our properties and parcels there on Cannery Row. You know, I somewhat don't respond too much to these fee requests and all that because they typically go through, but I'm not for it. I can write out a letter and probably do that for the 29 parcels, my 29 votes if that matters. But I love saving the ocean. I don't want to get waste in the storm water, but it seems like everyone works together that I know to do it. I'll look deeper into this and send in my vote, either yay or nay. But thank you.
Hi, I'm Fred Benez, and I live on Casanova Street. Been living in this town for since about 75 years. My reason for a no vote on the storm drain fees is a homeowner has to pay well over $57 a month. And then for our just like my friend was talking about, multifamily resident, they're going to be paying much more. Since I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. I've lived on this peninsula for many, many years. The cost of living here, as we all know, with property taxes going up every year, and not to mention the gas, food, and utilities, auto, home insurance are always on the rise. My reason for a no vote on these fees and any taxes is a few years ago, we just had a city sales tax increase, and now we're asked for another increase on all this stuff. I see poor use of city tax funds. The bike path that we have from North Fremont to Casanova, it begins from nowhere and it ends to nowhere. So that was a complete waste of city money at that time. Also, some of the neighborhood improvement projects, especially the one over Laguna Grande area, where we put these roundabouts over there, they were very, very costly, and vehicles still they don't slow down at all. They're constantly running stop signs. I walk my dogs every day in the neighborhood and witness very unsafe drivers. So a few solutions, what we can do is to avoid raising taxes and fees is we should increase the hotel city tax, but at least by 10%. Number 2, increase the special event permits by 10%. We have so many special events from April to November. All these festivals like the Greek, Italian, Turkish, Whale Fest, Root Festival, and Monterey Car Week auctions. We also have the Jazz Festival in the county. We are a tourist town, and we need to be more creative in ways that we can save money and have our out-of-town visitors absorb this cost and this deficit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williamson and council members. Given the number of onerous requirements to protest the stormwater utility fee, it should be no surprise to the city that the percentage of protests will be far below the 50% threshold and will now require a mail ballot. Although I am not opposed to the city management of stormwater, it appears that all parcels are not treated equally. The same parcel size of permeable land has the same fees as an impermeable land parcel, essentially discriminating against a resident that manages the water on their property differently from someone that dumps all theirs into the streets and into the storm drains. Our parcel, just west of the Larkin Street Bridge, has over 450 linear feet of stormwater that traverses our property. These creeks are on or border our property and meet under the bridge, forming Hartnell Gulch. We personally pay to maintain these stormwater areas, removing fallen trees and substantial amounts of trash from the high school next door. The city has never offered support or taken care of these ravines that channel this stormwater. I feel that given the location and size of our parcel, the majority of which is permeable, as homeowners, we would be paying twice, once personally to maintain our property and again for a new city stormwater management fee. Although the city has noticed what the fees for each parcel would be, there is no fee resolution attached to this council agenda. I'm also concerned that the action today for the council requests approval of stormwater-related services and facilities without noticing what facilities might be included. I urge the council to clarify this resolution if you want residents to understand the transparency of this stormwater fee and how these fees would be used. I also want to add that between the sales tax increase from Measure D, the stormwater fee, and residential permit parking fee, all concurrent, residents feel that the city is just reaching into our pockets to help cover the structural deficit by continuing to tack on new taxes and fees, increasing the cost of living for everyone. Thank you for your time.
I just wanted to state, I oversee 139 accounts. I received less than 60% of these supposed mailers. So of the paperwork for the knowledge of knowing what you're supposed to do, I only received 60%. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I didn't receive all of the ones that for every property that I'm supposed to have received. So my concern is that the entire public of who's supposed to be voting and responding did not receive theirs either. Also, when you read through it with a lot of people, to expect them to either mail it in or to physically bring it in. So I had envelopes to bring in to turn in as well. And so I wasn't sure where this white box is that's supposed to be turned in. So I'm just very concerned as far as the whole process of how you're expecting possibly more than 50% of the people to have responded to this. If they didn't get it in their mailbox, at least let's say possibly 40%, then also it says protests submitted via email and fax will not be counted. You guys literally do everything on the computers. You guys are responsible for all these things with these portals, but oh God, no, but don't fill this out and send it in and make it easy for people. Come find some little white box. I'm a pretty smart girl and I don't know where this box is. So I brought it inside to at least bring in because I don't know where this is supposed to go. So I just at least wanted to bring that up, as well as cost. So I've been overseeing these locations for over 26 years. When I was there were storm drain fees built in. It showed on the sewer bill. So I can be more than happy to bring them to another meeting and show you guys where for 3 to 6 months out of the year, your amount would go up. It would say for the storm drains. It used to be $12.50 when I started. The sewer is now up to $70.46. Just like this woman was saying, you guys are going to be double charging the citizens as well as the landowners for these storm drains. You guys are very pro for the tenants, not wanting to raise rents, trying to keep costs low. I don't know how you expect to do that when every time we turn around, you guys are trying to churn it to a landlord or an owner by raising something that they're already paying an exorbitant fee for. Every month, every single door in Monterey costs $70.54 for sewer. People don't realize how much it is as well because it's also put on your taxes. So the reason why I have to keep track of all this is every month I get incorrectly charged by the sewer company. Every month there will be a property where they add on another unit or two. I have to contact them every month. So when you guys were trying to take away the paper bills, that's the only way I can track when a 5-building unit is now being charged for 7 units. And oh, we're so sorry, we'll credit you back. where did these 2 units all of a sudden jump on? It really needs to be overseen, and the thought of paying more taxes for something that's not being run effectively is extremely concerning, especially with the amount that the sewer company collects, and that they get paid. More than 50% of their income goes to their wages.
Thank you. Meetings, Mayor and council members. My name is Rick Hoyer, resident of the city of Monterey, also president of the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. You should have already received my protest. I dropped it. I was able to eventually find the box around the corner, not outside the city clerk as it stated in the thing, but I found it and was able to drop it off. We have been swamped with confusion from people, from your residents. We have a measure P&S, which is fixing storm drains. Hello? But so I have to tell them, no, that's for capital improvements. Now, this is for operations. Well, isn't that what the general fund is for? Well, yeah, it is. It can easily be paid for out of the general fund. Oops, problem is you're $12 million in debt because you're not controlling your expenses. Nor are you even showing to the public how you're going to be fixing that. We're hearing it's going to be happening, but in the meantime, you're asking for storm drain fees. You're asking for a sales tax increase. You're looking at private parking lot taxes. You're looking at streaming fees. I don't know how in the heck you're going to deal with that one, because I may have a Netflix account, but I may be using it in Monterey. I may be using it when I'm out of the country. So how in the heck are you even going to be able to do that? You are going after so much money from your residents without even proving to them that you can handle your own budget. Fix that first, and you'll have a whole lot more support for things than you have now. Prop 218 process is in many ways rigged because it's virtually impossible to have a 50% protest vote up front unless you're willing to pay a ton of money to run a whole campaign to go to everyone to do it. Because at least with the vote, it's 50% of who's responded. But fix your house first before you start going after the public. We're already a very expensive place to live, and you all talk all the time about affordability and affordable housing and affordable everything. The amount of line items we have on our property tax bill, and a lot of that is not City of Monterey, it's everyone else. The line items on our water bill that aren't from CalAm, they're pass-throughs to the Water Management District or others, is ridiculous. And you're not the only jurisdiction looking at raising everything and things too. It's gotten out of hand. Stop this process. Figure out how you're going to meet the dollars first. I pulled out of my archives a Measure K flyer. For those of you, none of you were on the council when Measure K was passed. That was the last sales tax increase, which, by the way, I helped in the campaign to pass it. It promised in that the $2 million deficit then would be solved, and this would fix things forever without us having to cut services. How did we get 7 years ago from a $2 million deficit, raise 2 new taxes in the meantime, and we're now at $12 million? Pardon me if the public doesn't trust what's happening and think that money is being spent right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there any? Okay, so closing public comment, bring it back to the council. If the council's okay, I'd like to kick us off on this one. And I will say that we're going to have this continue to the evening session, so we're not going to do the vote now. We're not going to make a decision in the afternoon session. It'll come back in the evening, so we'll provide more transparency, more public opportunity to provide public comments on this. Before I get into my comments, though, I think a few questions came up that might be helpful for staff to answer. Can we have somebody describe how we got here? I know that this fee used to be charged to residents, to the ratepayers. Now the city is covering the cost. So this isn't a fee that has always been covered by the city. So how did we get here, and why, and what's causing us to now have to go back to residents to try to get them to cover the cost again?
So the history, it's a great question. Thank you. So how we got here, the old rates were last approved, I believe, or updated in 2002. So they haven't been updated or touched in 2 decades. A couple years ago, we sunset the fees, and we said we need to update the study to make sure that the expenditures equal the amount of the revenues generated by the fee, and we weren't exceeding it. So we're in the process of doing that study right now, and that requires a 218 process and then a ballot election. And so the 218 is what we'd be voting on tonight. And then the next step would be that ballot election, which would require the majority. So how we got here, we had an old fee. It was a little higher than what's being proposed now. And it was last updated over 2 decades ago.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is you're affirming the statement that I made, which is that the ratepayers used to pay this, cover the cost. It is now being covered by the city through some administrative process, and but now we're going back to the ratepayers and asking them to cover the cost. Am I tracking so far?
Yes, so you're correct. So the fund was it was financed through the ratepayers. So the old storm drain utility fund, that still has a small fund balance that's carried over from past fiscal years. That's nearly depleted, and any other operations beyond that will have to be funded through general funds.
Okay, and then the other thing I heard you say was that the amount that ratepayers were paying is actually was higher than what we're asking ratepayers to pay now.
Yes, previously I believe it was 544. Okay, got that right. It was 544, and the new rate is 472, 481. 481 for a medium single-family home. Okay. That scales based on property size. So bigger properties would pay a little bit more. Smaller properties would pay a little bit less.
Okay. Can somebody describe the process for mailing the ballots? There was the concern around only 60% of the units for the property management company received the ballots. And so can we just talk through what the process is for that? And is there evidence that shows, like a receipt that shows that we actually conducted the transaction with the Postal Service to ensure that that process was done accurately?
Yeah, so I think that Andrew may have left out a key point in his previous answer. The proposed fee would pay for 2/3 of the O&M cost, and that's a key point in why it's lower than the previous fee that was charged. To answer your current question, the database that the consultant used for the mailing of the public hearing notice is mainly the county assessor data. So if there's public concern over maybe you didn't receive a notice, or you're concerned that you may not receive a ballot, we do have a database of where all of the notices were sent, and you can also check the county assessor's portal online.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. I think those are all my questions. I'll just make a couple remarks here. So
Can we do questions, the rest of us?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we do a round of questions?
Yeah. Rebecca. So I will admit I'm confused. I think I understand the PNS is only for actually the repair of the streets and the sidewalks, and the only thing new that would happen would be an ADA ramp that had not been there before, but we call that repair and maintenance. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the attorney has decided that there's not going to be any new, what we'd call new infrastructure out of PNS. Yes, I asked for the wrong person. Sorry. You can.
We'll stand here together and we'll tap out.
And then, but then with the storm drain, there's this impression that it's just maintenance and operations, but actually there's language in there, in my opinion, that would allow some new structure, which actually I like, because I think we need more storm drains. Can you clarify for me and the public what's going on?
Sure. So Measure PS funds like maintenance or capital improvements, not expansion or capacity or expansion projects. So that would be, if culverts collapse and need a repair, that would do the spot repairs or replace it. That wouldn't be upsizing or adding a new culvert where one didn't exist. So it's rehabilitation of existing facilities, maintenance of existing facilities, but it's not expansion or improvement projects.
Right. If we needed a brand new storm drain because the capacity of the rains are increasing, we couldn't put in a brand new storm drain with PNS money.
Right. That would not be eligible.
Keep going.
So that would not be eligible. That's correct. And so the storm drain utility or the stormwater utility fee would pay for regular O&M. There's a lot of state reporting requirements. This would be minor maintenance projects, not like a whole capital improvement, but minor maintenance. Water quality and treatment, so removement of sediment and debris that gets in like trash capture devices, so that's not going out to the bay. Am I missing anything? Put me in. Storm drain cleaning, yeah, so the removal of debris out of storm drains and inlets, so if they get clogged with trash or sediment, that would be cleaning and inspections.
Okay, so if we need a new storm drain.
No, not new storm drain. This is regular O&M of
Okay.
our stormwater program.
Okay, so I hope the public's listening. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, anybody else have any questions at this time?
So, thank you. I don't know whether you would be answering this or who, but I thought it was mentioned earlier that this was a town hall on this recently. Can you talk a little bit about the town hall and what that comprised of and whether it was clarity given dealing with the difference of what Jean just kind of brought up between the P&S and what it's used for and what is actually being asked now?
Sure. Good question. So we had 3 different town halls. We did respond to questions. I don't know if there was a specific question related to Measure PS eligibility versus the storm drain. I know Measure PS did come up. We had an individual asked about the expenditure since the program's inception last night, and so I sent them some information this morning. So I don't think that specific question was asked at these town halls. But we did provide just general information to the public about what the stormwater, what's comprised in the stormwater program, what this fee could potentially fund, just to educate them on the stormwater program, the significance of it, and what the fund or the fee could fund. And this was a joint meeting along with the city's kind of financial position. Rafaela had a whole presentation on the city budget as well.
Okay, that'll be all for right now.
Do you have any questions? Okay. Thank you. So I want to start off by just giving gratitude for the public commenters. The council is listening, the city is listening, and obviously we have some really difficult decisions ahead of us. And as I articulated at our last meeting, our study session last Wednesday about our budget, this isn't a decision just for the council. This is a decision that the entire community is going to have to make, and we're going to have to go through some really challenging, a challenging road ahead together. And so I'd like to just give a little bit of a narrative, at least from how I've seen it. Been on the council now for going on 8 years here, and we didn't just get here overnight. I'm speaking more broadly to the larger budget, but obviously this conversation falls well into that concern that's being expressed by members of the public. This problem didn't happen overnight. The city has, for decades, was flush with money and decided to add new programs, including the NCIP. It decided to add new infrastructure, including the Monterey Sports Center. All great things. These are all great assets to the city of Monterey. But at no point in time did anybody on the council, and my sense is that there wasn't maybe much pushback from the public around it, around setting funding aside to maintain these programs and infrastructure. So now we have NCIP projects that have been created throughout the city for decades that is on the books for the city to maintain out of our general fund. The sports center, the development of that, no funds were set aside. So now what have we seen over the last several years? We've been investing into our city's infrastructure because no funding was set aside. We increased the sales tax, Measure G, and we increased TOT by 2%. That funding was mainly used to create reserve accounts for many pieces of our infrastructure so that we don't continue to kick the can down the road. So not only are we trying to pay for infrastructure that we failed to do to establish when we created these programs and this infrastructure, but we're also setting up reserves so we don't continue to kick the can down the road for future generations. This also includes, I just would point out, I think we had purchased 3 to 4 fire trucks that maybe average around $1 million each over the last several years, because again, this was not done for decades. So now the problem faces us all as a city. And we have, let me be careful what I I don't want to go into the ballot language issue, but I just paint that broader brush in regards to the issues that are facing us. And I will say that if we don't take these measures, that some of these were brought up today as if we're using all these measures to solve our city's financial problems. And I would argue that we're not. The streaming tax was brought up. I don't see the city moving in that direction, but it was a suite of policies, both revenue generating and expenditure decreasing policies that were proposed by staff to the council for us to consider to help address the issue. And in fact, this conversation is being painted as if the city is only going out asking for money, which I fully recognize the economic challenges, particularly those that are most disadvantaged in our community, are facing. I recognize that, but it's not only asking for revenue. We are also having conversations around cuts to our expenditures. And in fact, we've implemented some of those proposals that staff has presented to us. So I think it's important that we present a balanced conversation, and knowing that this fee was something that was paid by us as ratepayers previously, I think it only makes sense to right-size the ship and not continue to unduly burden the general fund so that we can have it do the things that the general fund is supposed to do. We need to get back to the basics, and this is part of that process. So I wanted to raise a few more things that were brought up in public comment. The bike path, I can't remember who said that. I just want to clarify that the bike path was not paid out of general fund money. That was a grant that was received. Some funds were used, city funds were used in support of that project being done, but that included updating the sidewalks, making ADA compliant, updating the light infrastructure. But the bike path itself, that funding was all non-city funding. So I just wanted to clarify that. Increasing the, I'm sorry, we can't debate, and because if I do it for you, I have to open it up for everybody else to do that. The idea of TOT tax, we just increased it to 2% by 2%. So our TOT tax is now at 12%. It's at the higher end of what visitors pay in our region. And so it's a tough thing to balance. I think it's a conversation that I'm open to having with the council, but I don't know how much we can increase that more at this point. And then the idea of around increasing events and fees. We just canceled our grants program going into, well, we're looking at canceling our grant program going into this next fiscal year, which was to the tune of about 100,000, I think it was originally. And so that helped organizations that struggled to make ends meet and have these great programs that we have in the city. And these are more community-based organizations. These things are good for the city. But I think us canceling that program and not continuing to fund those, allowing those organizations to figure it out on their own, I think is a burden enough, especially on those more mom and pop, I would say, events that are had in town. And it is a balance, because we are seeing opportunities for businesses and events to leave the city of Monterey and go do their business elsewhere. So how do we strike that right balance? I guess I'm offering, it's not as easy as just increasing a fee here, increasing a fee there. These are really tough conversations, but I do appreciate the analytical thought around how do we be creative around the solutions. So for those reasons, I'm inclined to support. Obviously, we'll need to count the ballots in the evening session, but I just wanted to kick us off. Who would like to go next? Okay, I'll go ahead and I will move to have the hearing, continue the hearing to the evening session. Second. All right, so moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we move to item 6, conduct a public hearing and receive public comments on the draft fiscal year 26-27 annual action plan for community development block grant, also known as CDBG funds, authorized submittal to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, authorize the city manager to make administrative changes requested by HUD, and authorize staff to amend the public service budget to meet the CDBG 15% funding gap. With that, I'll pass it to Dante for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, it's that time for us to consider the draft fiscal year 26-27 annual action plan. This is something that's near and dear to me. I actually started my career doing CDBG, so very familiar with the process. But the plan outlines how we propose to use our CDBG allocation and any projected program income. And so with that, I'll have Jacob, our Housing and Community Development Coordinator, provide us with the staff report and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dante. Good afternoon, Mayor Williamson and City Council members. Today, I will be presenting on the draft fiscal year 2026-2027 annual action plan, which is the city's application to the federal government to request funding for the Community Development Block Grant Program. I would like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Jacob Verania, and I am an HCD coordinator with the City of Monterey's Housing Division. Here are the main objectives for the CDBG program. The primary objective for the City of Monterey for this program has been to serve and benefit low to moderate income persons between 0 to 80% area median income. This is the action plan schedule. On March 25th, the city released the draft action plan for the public for a 30-day comment and review period. On April 14th, staff presented the action plan to the Planning Commission for recommendation, and the action plan after tonight will be submitted to HUD by May 15th. The city has established 4 major priority areas in accordance with our 5-year comm plan. Public services, which has a cap where the city cannot spend more than 50% or 15% of our grant on public services. There's also a cap on planning and administration costs where the city cannot exceed more than 20% of our allocation. The remaining funds available are split between public facilities and infrastructure and housing preservation programs. Right now, we do know that our entitlement amount for fiscal year 26-27 is $242,234 due to receiving our allocation from HUD on April 8th. And at this time, the city estimates that we will receive up to $1.2 million in program income for this fiscal year. The priority projects for fiscal year 26-27 are public service grants, where we anticipate spending around $215,400. We also recommend allocating up to $940,000 in the purchase and resale program and $118,000 in planning and administration costs. As for the backup projects for fiscal year 26-27, given that the amount of program income received can fluctuate, there are also backup projects that are included and written into the action plan should funding become available. The city would consider funding for public facilities and infrastructure projects, minor housing and rehabilitation and repair programs, and the major housing rehabilitation loan program. For public services, the city is estimating a budget of $215,400 in total and will allocate funding according to this chart. As we can see, the amount from this current fiscal year has increased compared to the year that we're currently in. And our office had 3 public service agencies that did not reapply for funding. And those were CASA, as well as Food Bank for Monterey County and Josephine Kearns Memorial Pool. And 1 new agency that applied for funding this year, which is the Victory Mission. In terms of public facilities and infrastructures, the following will be considered backup projects and will be activated based on project readiness and the priority of the project, as well as if funding is available. As we can see, the top project right now is the Mid-Penn Madison Street Affordable Housing Project. This was determined based on the amount that it was rated by our Rating and Ranking Committee, and the priority of projects are determined on how they were rated by this committee. Other backup programs include housing preservation programs, such as the minor rehabilitation and repair grants and the major rehabilitation and loan program. The city will be still prioritizing the purchase and resale program, which provides city-owned units for resale to low-income first-time home buyers. Due to the exact amount of program income being indefinite at this time, staff have included recommendations to adjust the public service funding in order to not exceed the 15% cap. Should the city need to adjust public service funding, staff recommends that the allocation for Meals on Wheels be reduced to around 8,000 less from their original allocation. If further reductions are required, staff recommends proportionally reducing all other public service activity allocations to comply with the 15% funding cap. Our recommendation for today's presentation is that City Council conducts a public hearing and receives public comment on the proposed draft plans, and that a resolution is adopted recommending that the City Council approves the draft plans and authorizes submission to HUD.
Thank you, Jacob, for the presentation.
Yep.
Opening up to the council for questions. Please, Councilmember Rash.
Thank you, Jacob. When we have a residence that's on the low income list and it's been purchased and then it's sold, it's up for sale and the city comes in and rehabilitates it, where does that cost add on to the new sale price, or is that absorbed by the city in these funds and that's the purpose of some of the 1.2 million? How does that work?
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Rash. So for our purchase and resale program, when the unit is rehabilitated, that cost amount is considered and is taken into account with for expenditures for the overall unit. But however, the overall sales amount after the rehabilitation, when the property is sold, will usually be received as program income for the program.
It'll be program income for the program. So who is the new buyer paying for it, or is the program?
The program would be paying for it.
Program's paying for it. Okay, that's what I heard. And the second question I've had from my community is, because I live right around all the apartment complexes and the homes and the condos at Lower Soledad, and I've run into people who are buying affordable, or I'd like to use the word affordable, lower income families buying them, and then they come to me and they say, I can't afford the new stove that I need. I suppose I could call you and do this between you and me and the city manager, but what is the answer?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So there is one of our backup programs is the rehabilitation program through the CDBG program, and so depending on if there are certain I would say rehabilitation that's needed, if funding's available, we would be able to activate one of those programs depending on funding availability.
Okay, so I'll get them to you and you'll help them, and they don't have to stress as much about the affordability issues that we're all facing, but especially our lower income people.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you so much. So quick question. You talked about the 15%. And that is of the prior year program, or is that of the current year entitlement that is the 15% of?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Barber. So it would include the prior year program income along with the entitlement amount that is being received.
So it would be the
So it'd be-
total of the 1.2. Or was it 1 point? Where's my number here?
Be the
1.2. Is that the total of the 1 point? The 15% would be the total of the 1.2.
So thank you, Dr. Barber. That would be a percentage of the
prior year's program income and the upcoming fiscal year's allocation.
Right, so the entitlement funds show 242,234, and an estimated program income of, which showed at 1.2, well, 1,223,306. So that's what I'm trying to get clarification on.
Yes, so right now, we are very conservative in that estimate because we do not know how much we're going to close out the end of the fiscal year with. And that's why we have to have some buffers there. And that's why we're asking if we need to adjust this amount once we get to the close of the fiscal year and we determine how much exact program income we receive, then we're able to solidify those amounts, that 15%. So we go far below that or close to below it and try to adjust and try to be hopeful that we're going, we are every month trying to figure out exactly that allocation amount, but we can't until we hit the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, and so you're looking for some direction on how we would want to have it to be flexible in which direction of what that would look like. Is that correct as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
And just to, can I clarify a couple of other items? So if we have funding available, the rehab is a backup project at this point. So if people can go ahead and come in and talk to us and we can see if there's any funding available. There are also other funds available that come through, like there's funding through CCAH. So that's another resource. So if they're a senior and they're on Medi-Cal, we're able to get them into a rehab program there as well. So we do look at other programs. If we're unable to help, there are other rehab programs available within the county that we can assist with. But right now, that is why we have backup projects. We're prioritizing probably the Mid-Penn project, and then also we're going to be prioritizing purchase and resale because we've been hit really hard with purchase and resale these past few years, trying to keep up with that program when we're looking for other solutions to ensure that we can continue to meet all of our CDBG goals as well as meet the program needs for purchase and resale right now. So,
Okay, so not a promise, but send them to you and
we'll see what we can do. And we are always looking at other grant funds and programs that could be helpful.
Yeah, so just reiterate for folks that are having housing challenges, you can contact our housing department, and if they can't help you, they'll connect you to the right resource. So appreciate the work that you all do. Regarding the Mid-Penn housing project, what is the plan for that use of funding?
Let me direct that question to our community development director.
Good afternoon. One of the deal aspects of the Mid-Penn housing project that the council's already approved was to provide a $1.5 million loan to the project. And I am very hopeful that this year the project is going to obtain federal funding if everything happens as it's supposed to. So what we're doing is reserving that $1.5 million as a backup project. So if it does come to materialize, that we can fund that loan. So it didn't have to, when we originally talked about that, we were considering the general fund. Obviously, the financial situation of the city has substantially changed. So we're looking for our federal housing dollars to help us meet that loan obligation.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then last question. I know that there was a lot of community concern around the transphobic language that was existing in the action plan. My understanding is that that's been removed, and I just was hoping that staff could clarify that for the community.
Sure. On, I believe it's page 1 of the action plan. It's now been clarified that the city of Monterey will comply with all state and federal regulations.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I would like to give a shout out to our city attorney for working with members of the public around identifying that issue and trying to work through a good resolution that allowed us to be in the space that we're in now. So thank you very much, Chrissy, for that. All right, that's it for my questions. We'll now open it up for public comment. So for folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's nobody on Zoom. Bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation.
I move that we authorize submittal to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Can I ask you to just accept staff recommendation because there are a couple other elements associated with that?
Yep.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move to our public appearance items. 7 on the agenda is to issue 2 storefront retail cannabis business permits contingent on obtaining a zone clearance to waitlisted applicants. 1, Infinity Asset Monterey LLC and Monterey Organic LLC. And with that, I'll pass it to Dante for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. The city originally approved 4 retail permits, but 2 permit holders are unable to meet the deadlines, which opened the door for the next applicants in line. And so tonight, council is being asked to consider issuing 2 storefront retail cannabis permits to the highest ranked applicants. And Mark Ackerman, our management analyst, has been working on this. He'll provide the presentation and answering questions that the council may have.
All right, good evening. Yep, Mark Ackerman, management analyst for City Manager's Office and the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here again to talk about cannabis. We kind of already went through this a couple months ago, you'll recall, so we'll go a little bit quickly. I just have a short presentation. So let's see. So background, council approved 4 applicants already. We already kind of discussed this. Our city manager, Dante, covered some of this. 2 of them weren't able to open in the time required. We did have a 6-month extension. They still couldn't meet that. So the areas where they were not able to open were North Fremont and Wave Street areas. Those are still open. And now we're looking to you all to determine if we want to move forward with our waitlisted applicants, Infinity Assets Monterey and Monterey Organic for those 2 zones. And I just want to do a quick recap of our scoring criteria because it's been a long time. So this is what we looked at. So qualifications, business plan, security plan, storage and transportation plan, labor and employment plan, local enterprise and engagement plan, and sustainability. And then we had a selection committee made up of the mayor, who was Mayor Tyler at the time and still is, and vice mayor at the time was Dr. Kim Barber. And you can see the scores here. So those are the bottom 2, of course, the top 4 are at the top, and those are the first 2 on the wait list. I just wanted to show you so you can see how they compare. They are very close to our 4th candidate, OTC, who's so far been a good partner in the city. And then let's see. So here we have your considerations and next steps. Like I said, keeping it brief. So do you want to proceed with one or both or neither? Those are your options. If you do select both, we'll have a drawing right after this to determine who gets which zone. We have the jar ready. And then let's see, after that, the selected businesses will need to get a zone clearance before they can get their full permit. So we'll continue to work with them. I will continue to work with them. Staff will. And just to let you know too, so it is fun to come up here and talk about a potential revenue opportunity. So that is not new taxes, right? So yeah, we're looking at potentially $300,000. They're about 20 grand a month right now that we're getting currently. So we've had over 230,000 to date. And yeah, we'll see how it works out with these 2 if you decide to go forward. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. Open up to the council for questions. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up for public comment. For folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, go ahead and close it in the chamber. I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 1 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and take that caller.
Hi, this is Chris Hester. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Hi, I'm one of the owners of Infinity Assets, and we did have an owner present earlier, but he had to leave, and I just wanted to make sure you knew I was present. That's it for now.
Thank you for the heads up. We'll go ahead and close close public comment, bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation.
I move that we issue the 2 permits according to what I think is staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move to item 8 is to conduct a drawing to determine the commercial cannabis zones for Infinity Assets Monterey LLC and Monterey Organic LLC to operate retail cannabis businesses. With that, I'll pass it back to Dante for staff introduction.
And I'll pass it back to Mark Ackerman to walk us through the process.
Okay, so yeah, hi, it's me again. So we're gonna have a drawing now, similar to what we did the first time. This is just to kind of keep things fair. Part of our intention here was just to make sure that everyone had a good shot at a property here. So we are gonna invite our community development director, Kim Cole, up to conduct the drawing.
Could I ask a question before we get going here?
Absolutely.
I know that there's been some concern around the methodology that we've resolved ourselves to the selection of. I recognize that we're in the middle of a process that we've kind of already established, but I'm wondering, do we have to do it this way? Is there an alternative way that we can make this selection?
You want to go ahead?
This is the way it's described in the city code. So to change that, we would need a code amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to restart the whole process. I think that would be the only way to change maybe this portion.
Okay. I was just trying to ask for clarity's sake. I know that there's some concern around that previously. I think.
Could I ask you to clarify the concern? I had some as I read it, but
Yeah.
I was just going to skip over it, but now I'll ask.
Yeah, so what happened was when the council did the drawing the first time, I can't remember the name of the company now.
Was it Embark?
Embark, thank you. Embark was ranked, was the top ranked I think it was both the consultant that we had to rack and stack all of the applicants, and then from the committee, it was ranked the highest on both of them, and then they ended up drawing the fourth one out of the four, ended up getting North Fremont, which they came to the conclusion that it wasn't viable to move forward with the business there, and they felt like, given that the fact that they were the best option, that it was a lost opportunity for them in the city. Yeah. So not to say that we needed to change it. I just wanted to ask that clarity for the public. So
yeah, it kind of worked out remarkably that the fourth option also got first draw. So
yeah.
It
was just truly random, which is what the whole process was that we established. So, all right, Mark, I'll pass it to you so staff can.
Well, I want to pass it to Kim. So
Perfect.
Kim, can you join us and we'll do the drawing, I suppose.
Drum roll, please. Somebody should take a picture or something. I feel like this is like a moment. So wait, this draw is saying what? Who gets what? Who gets first pick? Okay.
Monterey Organic.
All right, and then we have the last one would be, of course.
Are you really pulling it out of the jar?
Might as well complete the process. I do want to show that it does say Infinity Assets Monterey. They don't both just say Monterey.
Perfect. Yeah. Can we zoom in on that? Yeah. Let's hold that open. He's zooming in.
All right, and we can connect with them to get their preferred zone after this meeting. And I understand Chris is online, and Chris, we can connect with you after Monterey Organic. I have the first one, and then we'll just touch base right after.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Further action needed from the council at this time, or do we just adopt the draw, or?
Yeah, just adopt
All right.
We're good.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Is there a motion? I'll move. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, up next is yours truly, Mayor Williamson's request to agendize a discussion regarding, I apologize, this is a request from council members to agendize new matters. So item 9 on the agenda is Mayor Williamson's request to agendize a discussion regarding review of the council governance policy, agendizing process, and meeting efficiency. So in short, there's been a lot of discussion, I'm not saying anything new to the council, around how we as individual council members get things on the agenda. Currently, the process is established that you have to write an agenda report, as did I for this item, no more than 300 words, and submitting that to the city manager the Wednesday before the city council meeting. Then the city manager is required to put it on. It goes on the agenda as we have today for discussion on whether or not we want to agendize. So we're not actually debating the issue that I'm raising. We're just deciding whether or not we want to agendize this for a future date. And as long as that presenter, and in this case myself, gets support from one other council member, then we can move forward with having staff agendize that for a future council meeting. That was a lot. It's a long process, and I would just offer that if all we need is one other council member, we don't need to have something agendized. It could just be presented to the council that Councilmember X and Y both support bringing an item forward and having it agendized. I don't know if that's the solution to the problem, but I raise that as an alternative towards the broader discussion. I'm trying to think of what else. Give me 1 second here. I think the other piece to it too is not having clarity in regards to when it comes back to be agendized. So I think that needs to be discussed so that we can have clarity in regards to time frame and having that open discussion with staff so that we're all in agreement or understanding in regards to what that looks like towards the staff work plan and being able to bring that back and forward in front of the council. I think there's just broader discussions, I think, as it relates to the meetings in general, and the agenda prep meetings. And I'm speaking a little bit for Councilmember Smith here in his absence, but he had raised, do we want to establish formally utilizing Robert's rules or but there's another one I can't remember the name of, but what was it? Rosenberg, that's it. Yes, Rosenberg. So do we want to adopt that? How does that look, feel? At the council meeting, at the study session last Wednesday, I also kind of understandably caught the council off guard when I suggested that we each have 2 minutes equal to what the public had. I don't want to necessarily dictate how we do meetings specifically. I want that to be a more democratic discussion for the council to have. So those are just some of my initial thoughts. And does the council have any questions at this time? Please.
Yeah. Well, you're asking to look at the governance ordinance, and my question is, I would presume if we're looking at the governance ordinance, it will be welcome to comment about really any aspect of the ordinance.
Yeah, so my goal would, why I'm presenting this forward, is so that we can specifically help with meeting efficiency. So I've heard concerns from staff, I've heard concerns from colleagues on the council, I've heard concerns from members of the public in regards to the length of our meetings. And I'll just take another moment to share that I think 2 things are really contributing to our meetings going pretty long here. One is in this kind of post-COVID environment, and the fact that we have Zoom coming out of COVID, not only do we have more folks showing up than when I first got onto the council in the chambers alone, but we're also seeing a whole nother set of folks calling in on Zoom, which is great, but there's a lot more public engagement that's going on. And also we're doing more. There's a lot more business happening in the city of Monterey. So shout out to city staff for all the work that you guys do, woo woo. But there's a lot going on. So it's extending our meetings out quite long. And so to answer your question, my hope is that we can focus on the governance of the council meetings, how we get things on the agenda, kind of specifically to do with how the meetings flow and operate. That's what my hope would be.
And my question is, will you welcome comments about other parts of the governance ordinance?
Can you give me an example of what your thoughts are?
I can. We have had concerns since I've been on council for a few things. I'm concerned about some communications with staff, whether we follow that procedure well. We were concerned when I first came on that there had been use of the letterhead out of ordinance. I think we should talk about that responsibility. And I'm concerned about the conduct by potentially any of the 5 of us toward the public when there have been public responses from behind the dais that have been treated to me in a way that really marginalizes them and butts right up to their constitutional right to have access to their government and say what they want without retribution. So there have been 2 specific instances. So the point is, if we're gonna look at this, I want to look at it. I mean, that would be my request. If I have to, that's my request is.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to looking at other things. I think most urgently and most important is, I think, figuring out the structure of how the meetings are ran, how we get things agendized. This has been an issue that's been boiling over for a long time. So I'm not opposed to having those conversations, but I would maybe want to bifurcate a little bit and just kind of make sure that we're prioritizing this discussion to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, and that's my second area of comment. I have 3 that are pending. And one I think ought to jump to the front, and that's council expenses. And can we contribute to the effort on the community, on the part of the community, to lower our expenses? I think we owe the community a review of council expenses. It's gone from 118,000 6 years ago to 265, and we need to talk about that. If we are canceling our support of nonprofits and we're eliminating our relationship with AMP that's 30 years, we're asking people for all these taxes, we can do our part and we can show them. So I think that ought to go to the front. Then I have 2 waiting that are public health issues that have been over a year. One is the consideration of a smoking ban in multi-family housing, and then the concern for my district on the intersection of 68 and Skyline. And to me, those are more important than this 4th issue. What I want to respect that you want to do it, but we can shorten meetings by shortening talk.
May I?
So I'll let you jump in here in 1 second. The concerns that you're raising about the items that you've requested to be agendized is exactly the reason why I'm having this one agendized. Your items haven't been addressed yet, and I fully acknowledge that. So how do we have that discussion so that we can work with staff on a clear, transparent process to make sure that the council is having their items that they're bringing forward addressed in a timely manner? Dr. Barber, please.
So I want us not to get off track. What's before us is to agendize this specific request coming from Mayor Tyler Williamson dealing with governance policy and specifically talking about meeting agendas and how to agendize, which I think comes to your point exactly, because I've always had ambiguity, even since when I was on, about getting things agendized and then the timing of when they come. So I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think this is important to get this clarified because I've been asking for this since 2022. And I want to see this come forth so we have clarity of how it gets agendized and when the timing happens. So I think it's kind of putting the cart before the horse by doing the other stuff the other way around. We need the structure first and then be able to run. So I support that.
Any other questions at this time?
Can I say anything else?
Why don't we just, I think we got a little bit sidetracked there. Why don't we stick to questions at this point, and then we'll come back and we'll have a discussion. Okay. Any other questions? All right. There was one other element that I feel like it's important to bring up, and it's not identified in the report, but it's attached to all this, which is, and it's related to how the meetings function. I would like the council to consider adding a council meeting in the month and just having something in the calendar scheduled. If we don't need it, we don't need it. But I'd rather have a discussion around having more shorter meetings than going to 10, 11 o'clock at night when I know I'm burnt. After work, I start work at 6:30, I get off at 4, I run straight here so I can be at a meeting on time. Staff has worked a full day and is staying late with us. The members of the public are also busy with their lives doing their things, and people go to bed before 11 o'clock. So I think it's fair for us to have that conversation. So I just kind of propose that to the council as well. All right, let's open it up for public comment. So for folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. And for anybody in the chamber, you can identify yourself by raising your hand or standing up to the left of the podium. I see 2 takers. I see 3 takers. Anybody else in the chamber? All right, we'll go ahead and cut it off to the 3, and I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there's 1 on Zoom. Go ahead and start in the chamber.
Hi. So I didn't understand completely all the language. I asked several different professionals that I know, some people who are on other councils in other cities, to make sure I was understanding the whole picture of what was being asked and what was being proposed. So what I was told, that's what I'm going to kind of read this, is that was what was proposed and written in the letter wasn't truly about efficiency, but it was about getting control over what was being discussed and when. What is being proposed is about moving the decisions out of the public view, giving staff more control and limiting opening discussions. Now, again, this is what I've been told by other people when they look at this as a whole. From what I was told, under the Brown Act, you can't build this type of consensus out of the public meeting cases. There's 2 other places where this was already proposed and tried, where basically it went from the 2 votes versus a majority, and it was ruled that you couldn't do that. There was Wolf versus the city of Fremont, and then Roberts versus the city of Palamade, where I guess that was made clear. So like I said, this was something that somebody had given me as far as information goes, and I thought, well, this is important stuff for you guys to know. If this policy was allowed to go with private coordination with staff meetings and agreements, it kind of crosses the line where I understand it's supposed to be for the efficiency, but it becomes a legality issue. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Also regarding meetings, because I'm here a lot of times till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. One of the things that I've noticed as a person, because I do read the agendas, I do read the packets, that's why when I have questions, I ask other people who are well versed in those areas, is I've watched a lot of meetings where questions are asked where the answers are in your guys' packets. So a lot of times we're here very late at night because I did my homework and read my packet, but it's very clear that the other people in the room have not, because they ask the questions that go on for 20-minute conversations when it was literally already in their packet. If they would have just read it, it would definitely shorten the time, because I've been coming to council meetings since before I was 18 years old, and they were I think about like a 2-3 hour window of time, and they only used to meet once a month. So it was able to be done. It was just not as broad with the talks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I appreciate you bringing this up for sure. I have questions as to why there's not more information that is laced together for the public that would bring up the old decisions made, the different council members that have made decisions on it, and have more of a compiled information for the public. I think at that point, we would have a better understanding of, we basically have to become specialists in 72 hours. I also don't understand why maybe there's not an electronic platform where we can have that conversation, where council members can put forth their idea, and then the citizens have the chance to make that response, so that we kind of cut out the back and forth, but yet we're heard. So there's the 2 different things of just, it's almost like a Reddit string where you can say, this is how I feel. I don't know the Brown Act all the way, so I'm not sure if that's really an option. But hearing how the council members would vote first, and then being able to say our part and have that interaction where it's not part of the meeting itself. Also, the agenda being given sooner. So I'm not sure why it's only 72 hours or who's dictating what goes on it. Also, why is there not a running list of what could be items? Therefore, we can prioritize together. So, because it really seems like to me that it's kind of happenstance of what happens on the agenda. I don't really see a trend of movement. And unfortunately, with the deficit and all the other things that are negatively happening in our area, it's like we need to look at a whole new perspective, a whole new process of how to interact, because I know we all want the best for Monterey. So it's just seeing, like, I almost would say that whatever we're doing, what's the opposite? What would the kids do? How can we create a situation that will help in 20 years? And just having that conversation back and forth, because they're the ones that are going to be here, and we want to set them up. So this is almost kind of too old school to even take anywhere, you know? So I really appreciate you looking at it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Rick Hoyer. I've had the joy of serving as a city commissioner, one type or another, for about 35 to 40 years. I've been in meetings that have gone until 2 in the morning, and I empathize with the concern. But at the end of the day, public needs to be given sufficient time. And one area that you control time at the council is the editorializing, particularly after speakers have spoken by the council of this at times. It happened again today. You don't need to be answering or rebutting comments made from the public, for example, on the North Fremont Bike Trail, which, by the way, the city did spend $250,000 on from NCIP funds in order to get the grant. Or editorializing that, you know, the creation, the city created an IP and others. Actually, the voters created an IP, but none of that needed to happen. This was about the 218 process. Person had a concern about them, contact them afterwards, fill them in, but it doesn't need to be done from the dais. I've also been a person who has had what I have said rebutted from the dais after I've done my public testimony, which is very demeaning in many ways because you don't have the ability to correct inaccuracies that have been said. It takes time. It does not need to be happening. You all have to be responsible for running an efficient, quick meeting and keeping it that way. Don't cut out time from the public to offset that. I think you should agendize this to have a discussion among yourselves about different ways of doing it. It's always good to look at how you could do things better. And once you've got something on the agenda from a council member, you should have a time limit of when it's coming up and have an expectation of it. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Oh, yeah, we'll let you put it on, but we're never going to get to it. Isn't really a way that should be done either. So, yes, agendize it and deal with it. But at the end of the day, the public needs to be given sufficient time to do their due diligence of what you're doing. And there's a little note on the bottom of the council of the agenda talking about the legal aspects of make sure you bring it up at the council meeting if you ever want to be suing or anything else, because otherwise you might not be able to do it. Well, if you don't give adequate time to the public to talk, they can't even do that. Granted, they could send it in writing in advance.
Okay, and with that, we'll go to our caller on Zoom.
Yes, I'll call on this caller, and then I wanted to mention someone raised their hand after the cutoff, so I will not be calling on that person. But Lori, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to kind of pick up a little where Rick Hoyer left off, but I also had a thought about how to do it. So I'll just throw that out there first. Maybe the governance can come back and look at what Mayor Williamson's looking at, but also maybe it can be one of those special council meeting nights where you call it the governance night and we look at different versions of it, and you have, not versions of it, but 4 different items, and you look at chunks of it that are the most concerning. And for me, that's what I'm going to speak on right now, following up where Rick Hoyer left, that I want to speak and have it come back. If the governance is going to come back, I've asked now, this will be the 4th time, to have the council also have a meaningful discussion about the code of conduct and the accountability process for treatment of members of the public. And I am one of those over the last several months that personally experienced being singled out and criticized by the mayor after public comment closed at a point where I had no ability to respond or clarify or defend myself. And that really should concern every resident in this city, regardless of your viewpoint or politics. Public comment is one of the few direct ways we have to participate in our local government. And people shouldn't have to fear being publicly rebuked from the dais after a microphone is shut off. And certainly shouldn't feel intimidated from speaking because they worry about later being mocked or mischaracterized or personally targeted without having any recourse. So governance isn't just about meeting efficiency. Yes, it's very important, but it's also about public trust, fairness, and also about standards of conduct. So this request focuses on agendizing authority, meeting management, controlling structure, and length of discussion. But if we're going to discuss governance, then I really want it to apply equally to everyone sitting on the dais, and that includes how members of the public are treated. And right now, we really don't have any protection. I never know, oh God, am I going to get kind of skewered for what I'm saying now? Or will my questions get answered, or will I get ignored? There's just no formal accountability mechanism. I personally would feel better if there was some kind of standard or pathway for addressing that, just so that we know that it's going to include basic expectations where the public's respectfully treated, maybe some rules, you just don't talk after public comment closes. Just let whatever they said lie. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but if your residents start fearing retaliation, then no one's going to want to speak. And it's already such limited participation. That's not really healthy governance. So I just respectfully ask that council think about bringing that back. And I can't agendize it because I'm not on the council. So that means somebody else has to do it for me. So that's my plea. And thank you. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Okay, with that, we will bring it back to the council. I just wanted to respond to a few things that were brought up. There was the question around questions being asked around items that are in the agenda. And I would just share, and I've done this, I know that some of my colleagues have done this. We'll ask questions, even though something might be in the packet, because they want to be able to highlight something that's specifically brought up there. I think there's a lot of ways that we can all probably try to scale back our comments, but I just wanted to address the concern that was brought up there around the questions that were asked about things that were already addressed in the staff report. I love the idea of an electronic platform. I know we have Your Say Monterey, which is a space that members of the public can use to engage with the city in a deeper way on a topic. But I think these are great things that we can bring. The ideas that were brought up, I think, are great things that we can discuss more when this item, if and when this item gets agendized. So I think at this point, I just kind of need to get a sense of, I guess, if there's a colleague that supports.
I think I already said that.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I think that's.
So
And
I'm sorry, Mayor.
more round of comments.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish, but I suspect that there's a motion coming to give us a little bit of clarity moving forward. I just wanted to speak just from the standpoint of operations, and every city I've worked in over the last couple decades, this issue kind of comes up, right? And it's often a goal of us to be as transparent as we can and provide as much time. But a lot of the work that staff does behind the scenes happens outside of the meeting. And just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with right now, staff reports are done like 2 weeks ahead of time. I am actually in my queue, I have staff reports for the 19th that I need to approve. And so I would just ask, as council considers this and moving forward, that they would take into account that there is significant staff work that needs to be done for these meetings. And with the timing of things coming back, also keep that in mind, because we do prioritize things that have statutory timelines. I mean, you heard a couple tonight when they had to come at this meeting with CDBG and approving it. And so we do prioritize those things and then try to manage the timing in the meeting as we move forward. So we'll accept whatever direction council gives to us, but please keep that in mind as we try to manage the workload of staff operation.
Thank you, Dante. Please.
And I want to echo that, because I think that's a very important point, and I definitely support this item. because I think it's important for us as a council to have this discussion, but I think it could also be a good opportunity to share information like what you just shared, Mr. City Manager, because I think also that just in conversations that I've had with our residents, there are many folks who really don't have an insight in terms of how these processes work internally, right? And I've sitting here, I've had the privilege to see how dynamic of a document an agenda is. I mean, this is an agenda that the public gets, and sometimes it's 200 pages long. Sometimes I think the largest one I've seen is like 5,000 pages. So I, by myself, wouldn't want to put one together because it's a long document. And I understand that it involves a very collaborative process to make sure that it gets to the point where it needs to get. But what I'm saying is that I think this is a good opportunity for, again, the council to have this discussion and the general public to learn a little bit more about this internal process. So I support the item.
This kind of connects to one of the comments made during public comment around having agendas provided sooner. I mean, this is a discussion that we've had with staff before, recognizing that there's a lot going on in the background. Staff found a way of, agendas used to be published on Fridays. They moved it to Thursdays. I know that's still not a lot of time for some folks, especially going into the weekend. If everybody has stuff going on in their lives, right? Including the council. And we absolutely have to read every agenda packet. So we share that. And I think this is a good thing for part of the discussion as we bring this back. Councilmember Rush.
I support your motion. I thought the idea of having it be a special session was brilliant, and I forget who said that. I apologize. And I think it should be the full governance ordinance that we should do a deep dive. And I still want my items that are waiting to proceed. And I think it's ironical that the health and safety of tenants, which is the secondhand smoke issue in multifamily housing, has been ignored for over a year. I find that ironical, and I wonder what it's about. And it needs to happen. We know that secondhand smoke causes cancer. We know that women who are pregnant and living near secondhand smoke have babies who have higher incidences of leukemia and myeloma and brain cancer. It's appalling that a public health issue that you should be supporting and we should be supporting has gone over a year. That's it.
Councilmember Rash, I supported your effort moving forward. Again, the reason why I'm pushing this forward is for exactly all the reasons that you stated. It shouldn't have taken this long for this item to be addressed. I'm in lockstep with you there. So
and I totally oppose this governance ordinance going before issues that have to do with the health of the community that have been over a year. I understand where you're going, and I'm calling you on it. It's not
you're
right.
calling me on. I don't control the items that you requested coming back to the agenda. That's why
the agenda is made by you and the city manager.
No, it is not. I review the agenda that's presented by staff, with staff the week before. They present me the draft agenda that you see, today's agenda that you see today. Yeah. Councilmember Smith and I, which by the way, I invited the vice mayor to join in these discussions to do an agenda review. I can't then say, well, you presented us the agenda, get the smoking ban policy on the next week's agenda. Staff doesn't have time to do that work.
I'm not asking for it to be on next week's agenda. I am asking that a year ago it was to have been agendized.
You keep interrupting me. I'm trying to explain something. If you just allow me to finish my statement, I'm trying to build a bridge here. I'm saying I fully acknowledge what you're saying. I don't know how to help expedite the things that you requested to put on the agenda without going to staff and saying, hey, I want you to prioritize this, just like any one of us on the council could do. Short of that, we need to get this on the agenda so that the council can discuss it with staff in a public setting, and we can have a clear process about how to move forward, and you'll be part of that discussion so that we can build this process together. I want something that works. I don't want something to be presented and then sit on a shelf. Nobody's items should be doing that. So with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to bring the governance process forward as it relates to the agendizing process and meeting efficiency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those
Well,
in fa-
I would love to support your motion. I want it broader. I want the governance ordinance looked at in a special session. And I don't know why that can't be supported. And I have one more thing to say. The way you could have agendized and helped with this non-smoking ban is just to do it.
I think we're getting off of what is in front of us as the agenda motion. At this point, we need to either, take the vote, and that's been heard. We hear you, and then we can be able to move forward with that and get more clarification. But at this point, that's not what's before us. I agree with that. I mean, I'm all for the smoking ban, but I think we have to keep on topic of what's before us and take the vote on the agendas. And we have a motion already in lieu, and at this point, we have a second. So I think we need to be able to call for the vote. And I respect you saying what you said. I agree with the non-smoking piece, but I feel like at this point, we do need to take the vote to stay on topic.
Can I just ask staff real quick, what does the next council meeting look like as far as getting this agenda, just for expectation management?
At this point, we can just tee it up for discussion, and just with our recommendation, I can't remember exactly what the items that were on.
We do, for May 19th, we do have a packed agenda with master fee schedule, HR vacancy report, residential parking program update in the afternoon, evening, a couple of other items in planning. But we do, if our city manager is open to it, to have that discussion as part of a special meeting on the 27th of May, where we do have time to budget for that. If there's
That's
interest.
a
special meeting that we have on hold as a time.
If you wanted to add an item to that meeting, we definitely could do that.
Okay, and then just to clarify, it's the parking tax update.
No, that item, it's a tentative, we may not actually bring that forward until June, when we bring an update on that, as well as the potential first responder fee. So this discussion could replace that hold that we have.
Okay. I am open to having a broader conversation on the governance, but I would clarify my support of that is contingent on the prioritization of the items that I'm bringing forward. So I know that there's these other components of the governance policy, but if for the length of we only have the 2 hours during the study session. So if the length of the conversation goes on so long where we're not able to get to some of the items on the governance discussion, I just want it to be transparent and clear up front that we can pick up the rest of those discussions at a later date. So I'm trying to
I know.
I'm trying to.
I feel it.
Okay.
I'm feeling you.
Okay, I'm trying.
Was there another topic that night? I missed that.
Yeah,
Oh.
for that study session, we don't have another topic. In
I
fact,
can
this morning, we were discussing not having a parking tax update on the 27th, but actually moving it back a little bit.
Okay, who was the seconder? I was. Are you good with that? Okay, all right, we're gonna call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And with that, we will go to public comment on closed session agenda items. Closed session 10 is closed session conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956, TAC 8, property, a portion of land north of 731 Dry Creek Road. And closed session item 11 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956 6 Tech 91 Stronghold Engineering Inc. versus City of Monterey, Santa Clara County Superior Court. Open it for public comments. For folks on Zoom, you can use a raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on either of these items? All right, seeing none, we'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody on Zoom, go ahead and adjourn, and we'll be reconvening at 7 o'clock for our evening session. Thank you, everybody.
And we get dinner. And we get dinner.
Exactly.
with this case. Yeah.
I sent her an email.
Good.
I sent her-
Thank you.
So just trying another sound check. Mr. Firstman, can you hear us yet?
Well, and you know, I think Mabel has done so much. Mabel.
He cannot.
He can't hear us yet. The gentleman on Zoom.
Cut and paste, you know.
He's working with someone else.
Should we try to grab at least grab food while you can? Okay. While we figure out this.
Go for it. No, I'm just.
Eric's waiting for us.
Okay, I'll do it. You cannot hear us?
He can't hear us.
I'm gonna go there. All righty, we're going to go ahead and reconvene, starting our evening session for today's council meeting, Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. And we'll ask Councilmember Rash to kick us off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gene. And with that, we'll pass it to staff for closed session report out.
Yes. Item CS 11 was heard first, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, Stronghold Engineering Incorporated v. City of Monterey in Santa Clara County Superior Court. There was no reportable action taken. And for the second closed session item, CS 10, that was heard, this is regarding real property negotiators and negotiations on a portion of land north of 731 Dry Creek Road. There was also no reportable action taken. End of report.
Thanks, Nat. With that, we'll do continued general public comment. So how public comment period works is we ask folks to identify themselves at the beginning of the public comment period, and then we'll close it off, and only those folks will be able to speak. So if you raise your hand after that close off period happens, then you won't be able to speak. So this is for general public comments for items that are not on today's agenda. I'll start with folks on Zoom if you navigate your way to the raise hand function. In the meantime, I will check with folks in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak for general public comments for items that are not on today's agenda? I see one taker. Anybody else in the chamber? Okay, so I'll cut it off to the one in the chamber, and then I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there's nobody on Zoom, so we'll pass it to Hans. Hello, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I want to talk about something not on today's, but on the last agenda. I guess I was a little surprised at the discussion on the tree ordinance, and I personally feel that we're, regarding the decision made on the tree ordinance, that a little bit we're barking up the wrong tree, so to speak. I think the decision that was made was a little reactionary, and compared to what Pat Venza said, and the Monterey Vista Neighborhood Association had done a survey where the number one thing was really Monterey, as Tree City, USA, is one of the few cities around here that doesn't have a forest management plan. And a forest management plan, I think, is something we should really have. It's useful. It has a vision of what our forest should look like in 5, 10, 15 years. It should include things like the health of the forest, the fire danger, the public safety, and even things like replacement species and size distribution. And those kind of things, once we have such a plan, those will guide ordinance changes. Things like cutting down 6 to 8 inch trees, maybe exactly the kinds of trees that we want to keep, and because we'll need those for a replacement. Most cities around us, I just want to say, have these kinds of plans, or many of the cities and communities around us have these kinds of plans. Carmel is right now reworking theirs. They've had one for quite a few years, and they're reworking theirs. Pebble Beach has one, and most of these actually are not city funded. They're funded by CAL FIRE. It's easy to get those, to apply for funds. CAL FIRE is in strong support of these kind of plans. So I think as Tree City, USA, having a forest management plan with a real vision towards how we want our forests to look in the future, how we plan for the forest in the future, and how we go ahead with our tree ordinance, I think are really important. Otherwise, if we may find ourselves in a very dead forest down the line. So please, I'd ask you to, before spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a CEQA review that may or may not be even approved by CEQA, I would like you to rethink about that policy and think about establishing a forest management plan. Thanks very much. Appreciate all you do. Thanks.
All right, with that, we'll close general public comment, bring it back to the council, move on to, Item 12, which is a continuation from the afternoon session, is to open a public hearing to receive a protest of proposed stormwater utility fees and adopt a resolution directing a mailed ballot proceeding if a majority protest does not exist. And with that, I'll pass it to Dante for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, this is as you said, it's the continued public hearing for the 218 process for the stormwater utility fee. This is the opportunity for the council to hear from property owners on any protest to the stormwater utility fee. And we have our staff, Rebecca Baggett, who will provide us with a presentation and answer any questions that the City Council has. So I'll turn it over to Rebecca at this point.
Evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight's item is the protest hearing for the proposed stormwater utility fee. The proposed fee for the average medium family single home is $4.81. The proposed fee would fund 2/3 of the operations and maintenance costs of the stormwater program. The remaining 1/3 would continue to be funded by the general fund. The old fee was $5.44, and it was last adjusted in 2002. A protest hearing is a procedural requirement under Prop 218 before the city may impose a property-related fee to fund the operations and maintenance of the storm system. Prop 218 requires 3 steps: notice, a public hearing, and a protest process. Notices were mailed to all affected parcels on March 20th, 2026, satisfying the 45-day noticing requirement. Tonight's hearing fulfills the remaining requirements. The purpose of this hearing is to receive and tabulate written protests from affected property owners. 1 protest may be submitted per parcel by the property owner on record. All protests must be received prior to the close of the public hearing to be counted. This evening, we're requesting that council open the public hearing, receive any public comment, and then close the hearing, at which point staff will tabulate all timely written protests. A majority protest exists if protests are received from more than 50% of the affected parcels. If a majority protest exists, the city is prohibited from moving forward with the fee. If a majority protest does not exist, staff is requesting that council adopt the proposed resolution. This action would confirm that a majority protest does not exist and direct the next step in the process, a mail ballot proceeding, where property owners will have the opportunity to vote on the proposed fee. Ballots would be mailed to property owners and the voting period would conclude on July 6th at noon. The proposed fee would require approval by a majority of returned ballots in order to move forward. And I do want to note that we did receive 1 objection via email, which I printed out and you should have in front of you.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation. Bring it to the council for any additional questions as a follow-up from the afternoon session. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it out to the public. Anybody on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item, just ask that you stand up to the left of the podium. That's correct. Yeah. Anybody, sorry, just hold on tight real quick. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak on this item?
Nice to see you all.
It's a pleasure to see you.
Nice to meet Dante.
Ma'am, just hold on 1 second. I'm just trying to do some procedural steps here and then I'll pass the mic to you. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right, we have 2 takers. Anybody else? All right, so we'll go ahead and cut it off in the chamber to the 2 speakers that are standing. I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 1 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start in
I'm
the
Char
chamber.
Carter. I've lived in Monterey for 42 years. And I'm here to complain about the deficit of the city of Monterey, I guess $12 to plus million. And I'm against Prop 218 as a tax and the new sales tax because I feel that you haven't managed my money very well. And also on 218, I don't want to see my tax/fee on my property tax bill at the end of the year because I can't monitor it. And also it states in your five-page letter that you can go up in increments. And I also don't know what I will be assessed regard. I said small house, $4 and something. Well, I don't want to give the city any more money. And 12 million is out of control debt. And what is the interest on a $12 million debt also? After listening to 2 meetings and the budget twice, I also feel that we are bloated with too many employees, high salaries, high benefits, and we only have 30,000 people living in the city of Monterey. One or two people, I don't know how many, are making over 600, well, around 600,000. So I concluded that we need to cut staff and we need to cut some programs to balance the budget. I have no animosity about clean pipes, clean water, et cetera, if you're balancing the budget. So please, would you try to do so? Thank you.
My name is Jody Shizzle, JODYSCHISEL, and I am an owner in Monterey. I am here tonight to basically get more information because I am undecided. So good evening to Mayor and City Council members. I did receive the letter dated March 17th, and it seems to indicate that the fee proposed is about flood protection and maintenance of outdated infrastructure, as well as conserving the health of Monterey Bay. I do want to say this, I am not fully informed about what the other communities on Monterey Bay are doing, but there are several of them, and I think we all share a responsibility to make sure that what we're doing, but also what Santa Cruz, Capitola, Seaside, Pacific Grove, and Carmel are doing are also, we're working together, in other words, as a multi-community and putting forth an effort to preserve the Bay's health. On the other hand, the letter referenced a link that had a document called Cost of Service, which indicated that if this was proposed and it went through, that these funds would be kept in a separate fund. I have an extensive accounting background, and I would be extremely disappointed to find out that these funds were used for a big increase in maintenance personnel, salaries, and benefits, and also to hire high-cost constituents or consultants and administrators. Additionally, if this fund is not to be touched, there should not be any transfer or borrowing between city funds. I want to say that raising taxes and proposing fees isn't always the only answer to a deficit. Perhaps a hard look at how current revenues are spent deserves attention. Lastly, since we consistently hear how water sensitive this area is, I would ask if there's any plans to capture some of the filtered water and use it for appropriate purposes. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns and questions.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to our commenter on Zoom.
And Mayor, there was one hand that went up right as we closed it, so we'll let that person speak as well. So first I'll call on Tom.
Thank you. I have a question and, well, actually 2 questions. Maybe staff could explain why the fee isn't recovering 100% of the cost. Is that just out of fiscal restraint? You didn't think that the voters would tolerate 100%? What was the reasoning behind that? And then I believe Andrew stated in the afternoon session that you were in the process of conducting the rate study, which seems, that's if I heard that right, that seems a little odd to me that the rate study isn't already done and that what you're asking the voters to do is approve rates based upon a study that's been completed. So maybe staff could address that also. Thank you.
And our next speaker has connected with us on iPhone. If you could unmute yourself. Oh, that hand went down, so maybe that person has changed their mind. Okay, they've actually hung up from our meeting, so.
All right.
Yep.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council. I think there was a few questions in there that maybe if we can have staff come up and try to tackle. And I'll just let staff try to jump in, and if there was something that was missed, I'll try to maybe capture it for my notes.
Sure. So the two questions I heard was, why was it set to 2/3 of the full program cost? So if the council recalls, we did a community survey where we surveyed the community and gauged the support for the potential ballot measure. And I think it was like a 58% or so that were opposed or leaning opposed. And so based on that information, we gauged that it might be a little bit more palatable to lower the rate a little bit, and we received guidance from council to reduce it to the 2/3 level. So that's why it was set to 2/3. The other question was
the rate study.
The rate study, yes. So the draft is available and it's on the city's website. It was planned to be adopted or approved when we come back in July after the vote.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you.
And then similarly to the afternoon session, I'll just jump in here. I'm not going to repeat all of my comments that I shared then, but to do maybe a little bit of a summation of it. The challenges associated with our budget deficit didn't just happen all of a sudden. This was decades of time when the city was flush with cash, and the city at those times created a lot of programs and built a lot of infrastructure. So we look at things like NCIP, we look at things like the sports center, but at no point in time did councils in the past make sure that we set enough funding aside to maintain the infrastructure associated with those projects. And so now today we're left with paying for that deferred maintenance that had no money set aside for it. We've created reserve accounts so we don't continue to kick the can down the road. And now we're trying to deal with this budget shortfall that we're dealing with. So that's what led us here, specifically as it relates to the stormwater fee. Us as ratepayers paid this previously for, I think, related to the transition to the tax rolls, which we've already transitioned, which is a separate fee, a stormwater fee associated with Monterey One Water that you were referring to earlier. That's already transitioned. The city's portion of our wastewater fee has been transitioned to the tax rolls. This fee is separate. This fee we used to pay as ratepayers, that dropped off. And so this Prop 218 process is to put it back on the backs of the ratepayers, which it was meant to all along. That was the purpose. Now it's eating into our general fund. It's part of what's driving the deficit. And so we're just trying to right size the ship to make sure. And what staff just shared in their presentation is not only are we trying to right size the ship by bringing it back to ratepayers, but it's actually coming in at a reduced rate. So we're not even paying the same amount that we were paying previously. All right, with that, I'll open it up to the council if there's any, or should we do the vote? I guess I don't know the best way to go about this. Should we just maybe count the votes and then maybe we can hear from the council?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. We'll take a quick little recess here, break.
So it's not part of a recess. We'll need to do it as part of the meeting, but it's going to be fast, I think.
Perfect. Okay, so we will stay open here while staff counts the votes. They're going to count the protest votes, and then we'll move forward from there.
Perfect. And so first, I'll just go and check the box one last time in case any last ballots came in. And to our camera team in the back, if you could put the camera on us just so folks on Zoom can see us doing this tabulation process, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
like counting money.
Mr. Mayor, we received 108 protests.
Okay.
That is not a majority.
Okay. All right. And so with that, we'll bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation. I'll go ahead and move approval of adoption of the stormwater fee.
Second.
Oh,
I'm sorry, this resolution is to direct the,
the mailed ballot.
right, and to declare that a majority protest does not exist.
Perfect. Okay. That would be my motion.
Second.
All right. So moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to council comments. Anybody in council wish to make comments at this time?
I do. So I wanted to talk about SB 1893, talking about the your food with your buckets and things like that. I don't know how many people have heard about that. We talked about that in the beginning when it first came out years ago, but it started to evolve in saying there would be no repercussions if you didn't put it there, if you had, food in the trash. But I just want to give people a little bit of advance notice that a lot more things are coming down from the state, from Sacramento, that's going to be checking more into that and having more, I guess you could say, teeth, if you will, into it. So if you don't know about the 1383, please look it up, or you can come talk to me about it. But we are trying to do more with getting out and getting the marketing and promotions about it, having people get more comfortable with it. A lot of people who have had the buckets have talked about mold and different other things that have come, like if they're not emptying it out a lot of times. They're taking all that into consideration to come up with different bags that are like eco-friendly that they can use, that they could be able to reduce some of the mold. So there are different things that are coming down the line, but I want to give us a little bit of advance notice that more teeth is coming to that SB 1383. So if you're not aware of the food and how you're throwing it away, you can ask more questions. Region has a lot on their website that talks all about this, talks about how you can help find out more about it, but just kind of be aware of it. It's going to probably take another year before that happens, but that's why I want to give us some advance notice.
Awesome. Thank you for it. All right. And with that, we'll go to city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one announcement tonight. Our planning division is hosting a community workshop for the open space and conservation element on Wednesday, May 13th at the Monterey Conference Center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. There's also a Have Your Say Monterey page that's devoted to the general plan, and we encourage people just to stay updated with the general plan and as we move through the process. That's my only announcement for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante. And with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Ryan.
I'm actually going to try to